let me know when it's through.
All right, I think we're. Go to full screen here. All right, we can see it.
All right, hopefully this is presenting too, although I've only got like one slide. So I was going to talk about the, so basically during the OpenMRS hackathon in Singapore, a group of us who you can see here, you can see most of us here, and at least I saw Tim on the call. I don't know if anyone else is on today's dev forum, but yeah, a bunch of us, we decided we were going to try to build a sort of something that's like a manager's overview dashboard, and that you could see as basically kind of an independent app from OpenMRS. And we were going to try to build it using open web apps and using modern JavaScript and, well, modern client-side JavaScript technologies. And well, inconveniently, none of us were actually JavaScript wizards, but we were able to, by polling the room, figure out what are some of the common technologies that people are using these days, and we made a perhaps ugly stab at using them. So let's say that maybe the code that we ended up creating was not the most beautiful in the world, but it worked and it looked pretty. So I'll put up, I guess, these links later or just share them. But first, I guess we'll go ahead and just show what it was we built, and then we can peek at the code. And you'll see I sent the talk post, and I tweeted a little bit yesterday about I put together a tutorial for how you would set up a new open web app and start to write code there, and how you can do that against the OpenMRS standalone, which the code there is slightly cleaner than what we did in the hackathon because I've had a chance to learn a little bit more. Anyway, and again, I'll also put in a plug for how cool the Open Web Apps module is, and thank you, Satoshi, and for spearheading that in the very beginning and for everyone who's worked on it. So this is my basically regular OpenMRS reference application environment running, I think, 2.3, well, the latest, I guess it's the latest of the reference application. Hold on, let me pretend we log in, we see the home screen, and we've added maybe an icon to the home screen for an app that would be our dashboard. Interestingly, it looks like I haven't tried doing this on a smaller screen before, but I guess we chose a screen size that doesn't fully fit. But so what we've got here is an Angular JS app, and we're showing a couple of things. We're making a couple of calls to the, actually a bunch of calls to the reporting REST module, and retrieving a few of the things that you can retrieve with some built-in functionality in the reporting REST module. Actually, we needed to add some functionality there. I can come back and talk about that. But the idea was we wanted this to be purely JavaScript client-side, not write any server-side code. So here, you know, this is the count of patients who had encounters on a given day. I can go ahead and I'll go ahead and give someone an encounter today so that you can see that get added. And we're charting this with the Angular NVD3 library, which I believe is really powerful. Is also not the easiest in the world, and perhaps we should have chosen since we weren't actually going to do anything that sophisticated, we should have chosen a slightly simpler library, or we could have anyway. And you can see sort of different time ranges here and all of these queries get redone and the thing gets redisplayed. Right, so the last week, I guess there were 2 encounters both by male patients. In the last 3 months, four encounters. I'm not really sure how, though I guess 2 of them were male patients, 1 was a female patient, but someone had 2 encounters. And then I'll go ahead back to the home screen. I'll add an encounter for someone. And if I go back to the dashboard now, having created 1 more encounter, actually, that's strange. I would have expected to have seen 1 more encounter show up. But wait, Doc.
Try switching views.
Oh well, maybe that doc will disappear at some point. There, anyway, yeah, I'm not sure why an encounter did not show up there. But, well, I can come back to that. So anyway.
Can you try switching views?
Sorry?
Try switching views.
No? Yeah, not showing up there either. Anyway, I'll make 1 more shot at creating an encounter for someone else. And all right, maybe.
Went from 2 to 3, didn't it?
Yeah. So I think what's probably happening is that when we wrote this code, we just start from right now and subtract 24 hours. So probably, yeah. So there's actually a bug, but anyway, that's what we get for hackathon code. So yeah, I get. Anyway, you can
Actually, Darius, I think you had another visit just yesterday, and so because it actually counts the number of patients with a visit, you had yourself with 2 visits essentially within the same 24-hour period for the same patient. So that's why I don't think it gave you the extra 1.
Yeah, something like that. I think we were calculating based on encounters, but all the same is within the 24-hour period because I did a couple of these last night.
Yeah, I thought we were actually counting the number of, the actual thing says count the number of patients who have encounters on the given day. So it's actually, if you have 3 encounters on the same day, you only count once because it's actually counting the number of patients.
Right, yeah, no, that's right. I think the only problem is it's probably doing a 24-hour window. Oh, you know what? No, sorry, it's probably doing a 24-hour window that doesn't start at like midnight, but rather starts right now or something.
Yeah.
So another thing we did is we used Bootstrap CSS. So this should be a reactive UI, responsive scaling. So I assume that now if I scroll down, I'll see, Yeah, that other chart. So by making it narrower, it didn't keep them side by side anymore. And also by making it even narrower, that the chart scales even smaller. So so then what we ended up actually doing, I can walk through some of the code. I don't know if anyone has any questions specifically first.
How did you do this? How did you do it?
All right. So, and again, we apologize for the fact that none of us are primarily JavaScript developers. So hopefully the layout of this project is sane and doesn't have too many worst practices in it. So we used a couple of technologies. We used so we used Gulp as the technology to build the module, or to build the open web app, and you can read instructions for that here. And in retrospect, we could have, if you look at the tutorial I did yesterday, there's some slightly different instructions for how you would use Gulp. You just have to use npm directly, anyway, if you were to download the thing, you would just use npm. But sorry, we could have set this up in a way that you just use npm instead of needing some of these commands. However, we didn't know what we were doing quite then. So we used Gulp as the build system. And basically, and within Gulp, we're using Gulp Zip, which is a plugin to it, which will, which handles zipping files for Gulp. And this is our, you can see there's a couple of different tasks defined here. The default one builds the zip file, which is what the open web app needs to be based on the sources. And we also have a task, a fully local task, which is going to, and this is great. This lets us make changes here, or changes to the code, and then with a one-line command at the terminal, deploy those to the running OpenMRS instance, assuming you're doing it locally on your local machine. So I can show that. So if I say that this is a test here, and I say go deploy local, so basically this will have copied the files to the folder that I specified in the sculpt file. Which is over here, and as you saw, it also took less than a second to run that command. So if I refresh, you see this big ugly, this is a test that I just put in. So basically, we were able to, using the standalone, using basically, and I think, Tim, you can maybe confirm that you were able to get this running by the end, but running just a regular download of the latest OpenMRS standalone, adding the Open Web Apps module, and then also adding sort of snapshots of the reporting REST modules which we needed. You could just do this against the standalone and not ever have had to install any OpenMRS sort of significant OpenMRS dependencies. So that feels like a transformative thing. That people could basically within 10 minutes have open an environment that they can start writing code against, rather than the typical half a day it takes for someone getting there, half a day plus that it takes to get your first OpenMRS environment set up. Right. So we use Gulp. Something we did not actually do correctly, I think. Well, so if you look at this node modules folder here, it means that I've installed Bootstrap, Gulp, and Gulp Zip with npm. I think it should be possible to do, and I think it's probably the right way to do things, but it is not what we did, would be to make, say we wanted to use Bootstrap, make that be one of the dependencies of this from the perspective of node. And so they're just saying npm install will pull that dependency, and then in our build script over here, we would copy the Bootstrap CSS files into wherever we want to serve them up from. However, what we did here with all of our dependencies, we just went downloaded them from the web and put them in our source here. If you look in Bootstrap or in CSS, we've got Bootstrap, and then we put in font awesome, something for NVD3. And so there's a better way to do that, which I hope someone else can update the tutorial wiki page I wrote yesterday with sort of the correct JavaScript practice for doing that. So what we've got then, looking at this index.html file, you can see basically it's a sort of single page app, although with a couple of screens potentially, and a lot of different JavaScript libraries being included and a couple of style sheets. Lodash is the newer version of underscore, or the newer replacement for underscore. Moment is for dealing with time. There's some Angular, D3 and NVD3, and Angular NVD3 are all for charting. And then there's a few of our own, and then there's some pieces of our own code. So we did this as an Angular app. And so since we were using Bootstrap CSS, we were able to do something like this and get the nice looking standard Bootstrap header on top. And the rest of this will be filled in using Angular routing so that we could have multiple screens, although at the moment our other screen just says to do. And so there's again, this, I don't know whether separating these from index was right or not, but so these are the two Angular templates that we have. And
those are, I think often those are put in a partials folder.
Yeah, it could be partials, it could be templates perhaps.
Yeah.
Partials is certainly what they call it in Ruby. And that's probably there would have been a better name for that folder. And so, as you can see, this is partial HTML. And somewhere, the neat thing, I have to say, like using a JavaScript technology that lots of other people use is great, because there's all sorts of libraries to do things really quickly. So in this case, right, the the HTML, well, this is the HTML placeholder for where this graph will go. And because of the nice way that Angular architects its event listening and things like that, all we need to do is set, we just need to sort of call some stuff in JavaScript, and then this thing will be updated in the UI. So as an example of that, we set it up so that like clicking on the week versus month is going to call a method in call a JavaScript function from today. Basically, we're setting a different data range from today. And that from today function basically just changes the, changes a few values in the scope, the step size, end date, and start date. And we must have, in Angular, we watch for any changes to those three things, and if so, then we can redraw the graph. And I'm sure this could have been cleaner, but well, anyway, we're working with moments and regular JavaScript dates and things like that. So, and then formatting things for ISO versus for display. We use the sort of common pattern we've been using to use Angular as an ng resource to, in this case, well, I don't think we actually are using that visit one, but we set up one to be able to call reporting REST and evaluate a cohort. And the way this graph is actually being run, right, in this case, we actually just make 30 separate calls to the reporting REST module to find like number of encounters on a given day with 30 different times, and we just draw them. It seems to perform fine. I don't know if it would be slower if there were actually data in this database. Well, yeah. And right, so it's slightly, and so that is something that I reminded we need to start having some more design discussions about, or dev call discussions about, like how do we make reporting data or sort of aggregated, analyzed data more accessible via REST. Ben and I wrote the reporting REST module together in the first place long enough ago that Ben was still around. And so, like, there is a resource that if you do a post against it, it'll run a. Actually, this is some new functionality we had to add, but that so the reporting module has something called definition libraries in it. And so these are sort of things that you could evaluate. So these are things you can evaluate just by name on any OpenMRS instance. These are built in. So like any time you can sort of, there's a few places you can call the reporting module and ask for any encounter during period, and that will sort of, if you're giving it on or after and on or before parameters, it'll do that for you without having to actually set up anything in your database. For some reason, yes. So where is? Oh yeah, and And so that's what's happening here. We're just calling, we're doing a get to that resource with asking for any encounter during period and the start date and end date, and the return from that. Let me actually.
Darius, which tool are you using? Is it an Angular feature or is it a library for getting these resources? I saw a resource, and then you're doing these queries that seem to be calling the API. I'm just wondering where that's coming from.
Yeah, so it's this ng resource is the library. It's the sort of built by the Angular people.
Okay, and that's just commonly used for REST calls, and that uses HTTP under the hood or something.
Yeah, it uses HTTP under the hood. Now, there are many who say that an external library called REST Angular is better. It happens, this is the one that, well, we started using this one because it was the sort of seemed like the default one.
Okay.
And so what's happening here is we're saying basically I'm going to mix terminologies here to be more Java friendly, but effectively this bean, or this object, this evaluate cohort service is defined by using $resource and setting it up with this URL and a couple other settings here. And so then we can call a couple of things on this evaluate cohort object. Like we do here, and then the results will come back, and it's worth showing those, I guess. So as you can see, there's a whole lot of queries. Find one that has some member. Here we go. Right, so we made this query, and what comes back from it, or under the hood, that calling encounter, or whatever, evaluated cohort.query makes this call. What comes back, we see the definition that ended up being evaluated. And I mean, if you care, it was a matched parameters cohort definition. Whatever. So that was the definition that was evaluated under the hood. And the members are ref representations of patients that you could then follow a link to see the full view of the patient if you wanted to. In this case, we're just looking at the size of this members list. So it's really neat to be able to make those queries via REST. However, it's a little bit, well, anyway, we need to make sure we have a better or a well-designed REST interface for calling the reporting module. And I will admit that I don't know what the right REST interface is, so I really would like advice and help on figuring out what we should be doing there from people who might be interested in calling it. The other thing that we ended up implementing was that there was not at the time a way to query reporting REST for anything more complex than these very simple definitions that you see here, and there's only like 10 of these things. But what we needed to do the chart of like male and female who had encounters during the period in question, what we needed to combine two of these things. And so we ended up, Mike didn't really like this, but it was the quickest way to do this, we made it possible to post to the reporting REST module the serialized XML that would represent like a whole, in this case, a cohort definition, in this case, a composition cohort definition that composes two things together, and makes these two individual searches. Anyway, and so by posting this XML, that will then be evaluated. And that was the sort of quickest way to be able to make the reporting REST support doing compositions. Well, surely there's a better way to do that, to support that also. And it would be great to come up with that.
Cool. We've only got a few minutes left. Can you show the tutorial page you made?
Sure. So this is on the OpenMRS wiki, and I sent a link on talk. It's called Developing an HTML and JavaScript Open Web App Quickly. The main thing, I mean, it basically, and also there's a, you could just fork this Git repository where I have the skeleton of this, and hopefully, we can make a better starting point. This is really truly a skeleton. But all you need to do is run OpenMRS locally. And in this case, I was just describing how to run the standalone, but I'm sure everyone on this call already knows how to do that. You install the Open Web Apps module. You create the skeleton of your own Open Web App. And then this is just about how to set up a gulp file to build the Open Web App. And there are, of course, other technologies you could use for that. You need to upload your Open Web App one time through the web UI. And after that, you're then able to set it up so that you can just copy files to the location on disk that they're being served from, because you're running a local OpenMRS server. And so this talks about how you configure that. And again, then the skeleton up until that point is, you could just fork that from a GitHub repo here. And finally, you want a link on the home screen.
Very cool.
And just to throw in, we also discovered as we were doing this a bug in the Open Web Apps module where I think if you were running in the standalone, I believe, this logo would always be a broken image, and actually clicking on these, you couldn't view these things in the standalone. So I think Tim sent a couple of pull requests to fix those issues, and they were nicely merged very quickly during the hackathon. And, yeah.
Very cool. So if someone tries this tutorial or is playing around with this and has questions, what's the best way to ask questions? Is it on that page, or is it going to talk?
I would say going to talk is the best place to ask questions. It's more interactive.
Talk.openmrs.org. Okay.
Talk.openmrs.org, yes. Although, if you comment on this, then we'll see it also. I'll just point out that this little contributions welcome section, right at the moment, we're actually just setting up. You have to this is truly the initial skeleton of an app and of code. And it would be great if someone wants to extend this tutorial and show some more JavaScript best practices, especially if you're actually a JavaScript developer.
Cool.